So what is the greatest gift that we can give to another person? I too truly believe that it's listening. It costs nothing, but means everything. And it's a gift that benefits both the listened to and the listener. Because as the Dalai Lama says, when we speak, we are repeating what we already know. But when we listen, we may learn something new. Wise words indeed. I'd like to start by bringing you all back to a very significant moment. A moment different for each one of us, but equally important. Do you remember the moment you were born? Well, in fairness, you probably don't. And that's okay, but that moment when you, uniquely you, emerged into the world, that moment was truly momentous for so many people close to you. It was a moment met with, at first perhaps, nervous anticipation and then silence. Until you cleared your lungs and then let go and you screamed. The glorious sound of your unique voice. As you grew, you continued to express your unique voice in a variety of different ways, through gestures, facial expressions, speech, through your drawings, through your writings, through your choice of toys, choice of games, choice of friends, your likes, your dislikes. And when you were listened to, you didn't need to scream anymore. One of my first memories of having my unique voice listened to was growing up in Ferban, not so far from here. One of 7 siblings, we grew up in a small council house. A small house with big dreamers. In our house, in our kitchen, we had a small fridge, smaller than this. I'll never forget that fridge. Why? Not because it was cool, although it was, but the space in front of that fridge was my first safe speaking space. You see, when relatives and neighbours would come to our house, after the niceties and the cups of tea, my mother couldn't wait to introduce our performances. Niall will sing a song, she'd say with pride, in her lilting West Cork accent. My brother Mike would duly stand up in front of the fridge and sing a song. Then one by one, she'd continue to introduce us. Now Francis will sing a song, now Agnes will sing a song, now Brendan, Johnny O'Donnell will sing a song, and now Siobhan will say a poem. The message I got from that was that I was particularly good at saying poems. And the more attention and applause I got from my recitations, the more expressive I became. The more I began to play around with hand gestures, facial expressions, body language, and vocal variety. I didn't know it then, but I was learning through experience that I could use these techniques strategically to communicate important messages. And when I did, I felt listened to. Have you ever felt listened to? In any of your relationships? It's an amazing feeling, isn't it? As the years went by, my mother continued to encourage me to read my school essays in front of that fridge and practice my school debates in front of that fridge. And she listened in a spirit of TLC, trust, love, and curiosity. When I was 16 and going into my leaving cert year at school, my mother died suddenly of a brain hemorrhage. In a state of shock at that time, one of my first reactions might surprise you. I wanted to write a poem for her and say it at her funeral. In fact, all of my family performed at her funeral. Mike, Francis, Agnes, Brendan, Johnny, Donal, and even Dad. My father was a great lover of the spoken word. Right up until the age of 85, he could recite at the drop of a hat, by heart, many long poems, some of which he'd learned in primary school. I was always amazed by that. At 16, I spoke at my mother's funeral because I was somehow ready and knew that I could. And looking back now, I'm so glad and grateful that I did, because not only did it help me with the grief that came in the years afterwards, but I did that in spite of having always been an extremely, extremely shy child. I blush for no apparent reason. I was never the first to put my hand up in class, even when I knew the answer. But there's something about my early experience of being listened to and heard that has stayed with me across the years and has impacted my life for the better. I learned through experience that my voice mattered. And the more I was listened to, the more I participated. Even though I was shy, I had a certain quiet confidence and knew at a deep level that I had something unique to share and contribute. We all do, don't we? Public speaking and communication skill training has since given me the courage, confidence, and competence to raise my hand and my voice more often now, in spite of my shyness. I've stood up and spoken out on many occasions across my life when I've had something to say. In fact, coming up to my own wedding, which was at a time when it wasn't common for the bride to make a speech, my husband-to-be, Jerry, asked me, kind of nervously, if I'd have something to say. To which I replied, Jerry, when did you know me not to have something to say? I'm convinced that speaking, listening, communicating are superpowers. We all have. And we can all learn, develop and hone these skills to various degrees. My own children, Katie, Neil, Andrew and Philip, like Rachel, learned and practiced public speaking skills in primary school. And it gives me great pride and comfort as a parent since to see how they've chosen to continue to express their unique voices since in a variety of different ways. Through musical performances, through their writing, through fashion, through sports, through taking on leadership positions on committees in secondary school, as choras, as prefects, as class reps. But most importantly, in my opinion, what I've seen is that they've been equipped with skills for those situations in life that none of us would choose, but can rarely avoid. In bullying scenarios, or when injustices were observed or experienced, when it really, really wasn't easy. It really did matter. I'm so proud to say that my children use their voice to stand up for themselves and others. I like to think that because they already had the tools and skills in their toolbox from a young age, they were somehow ready for those unfortunate but real-life situations. And speaking of real-life situations, I'm pretty sure that these skills will come in handy in their relationships, day-to-day interactions, when they're preparing for oral exams in secondary school, or oral CBAs, class-based assessments, for interviews, for workplace presentations, for negotiations, or maybe for that cup acceptance speech in Croke Park someday. Or maybe when they're preparing to give an interview to a sports journalist on their return to Ireland with their teammates after the next Olympics, with more medals, who knows? Or maybe they might be that sports journalist. or maybe just for the day of their wedding, or their sibling's wedding, or when they're asked to stand and deliver to the very best of their ability that all-important eulogy for a close relative or friend. We've all probably heard it before. The majority of adults, not young people, worldwide, fear public speaking on a scale second only to losing a loved one and death. And many say they would rather die. They would rather be in the coffin than delivering the eulogy. Is that really the legacy we want to passively pass on to our children, when it is within our power to empower them with communication skills and leave a lasting legacy of listening? Aware of the powerful gift that listening is, in this book somewhere, listen, I've aimed to explore how we can create environments where all children's voices can be genuinely listened to, heard and valued. All adults who live, work or interact with children have a role to play in this. So for parents, Listen provides some practical advice on how we can encourage and support our children to express themselves, and when they do, how we can listen. Because how we respond to their small stories today will shape how they share their big stories tomorrow. For teachers and school leaders, Listen offers some strategies to help to integrate and embed more student voice practice in our classrooms and schools. And because I know there's some teachers and school leaders in the audience, just here are a few very quick tips that you might consider on your way home tonight. So I suppose it's very important to start where you're already at. Start and continue from that point. So noticing and building on and leveraging the good practice that you're already doing in the area is a good place to start. Co-creating those safe, supportive spaces is really important. You can create them, or better still, co-create them with the students. And I suppose when decisions are being made in the classroom or school, just to stop and reflect. Have we, how have we, and where have we considered the voice of the students here? Encourage, enable and empower communication at every turn. And look at some of the structures that are already in place in your school that's facilitating student voice, and maybe some structures you've thought about putting in place. Class leaders, a rotating system of class leaders, student councils, as Rachel spoke about, or child advisory panels. And also thinking about the pedagogies, the teaching methods we already use. So where there's plenty of dialogue, discussion, debate, pair work, group work, circle time activities, just to be mindful that all of these are facilitating student voice and can be leveraged to facilitate more. And ultimately, as Niall said, if we want to hear anybody's voice, it's not possible to speak and listen at the same time. It's just not possible. So if we want to hear our students, we need to speak less and listen more. And the Lundy model, which has been mentioned a few times tonight, is of course a fantastic guiding framework for helping educators or anybody working with children to facilitate more of this work. As I get older, I don't know about you, but as I get older, my memory starts to play hide and seek with me. Does that ever happen to you? And what I find really helpful is to have a mnemonic to help me remember main points of any presentations that I attend. So I just wanted to help you remember some of the ideas and some of what Niall shared tonight, some of what Rachel shared, and hopefully some of what I'm sharing too. So I wanted to come up with a mnemonic to help you. What better word to use than the word listen? So L stands for let them speak. I, intentionality. Listen with intention. Not the intention to interrupt, to have your say, or to correct, but with the intention to understand. S might stand for the safe, supportive spaces. T for tuning. tune in. Remember tuning the old radios where you had to tune them in really carefully. But tune in not just with your hearing, but with all of your senses. Notice what the children are trying to communicate, what they're saying, what they're not saying, how they're saying it. So tune in with all of your senses and trust what they're communicating. And E, encourage, enable and empower communication at every turn. And N, notice. It's very, very important to notice the resulting difference in participation levels when you do any or all or some of these. And I also think the N here could be a kind of an invitation for us to consider. Now this might sound a bit wild, but it might be an invitation to consider the notion of noisy classrooms as somewhat naughty or negative. Maybe we need to challenge that notion. What if there is such a thing as nice noise? Nice noise. Maybe the voices of our children talking, engaged in dialogue, engaged in debate, engaged in discussion, and learning through the process. Maybe that could be nice noise. That might sound a bit revolutionary, but just something to consider as you go away tonight. But ultimately, for all of us adults that live, work, or interact with children, I hope, and I've aimed for this book, to emphasize the fundamental importance of inclusive practices. Because every child, from that moment when they are born, is wonderfully unique. And every child, regardless of their background or their ability, deserves and has the right to be heard. So just like the small fridge of my childhood, I really hope that all of you have safe spaces where you can feel listened to. I hope you all have spaces where you can listen to others. Maybe clear away the distractions or the devices for a little while, just to listen to others. And I hope this book, Listen, inspires you to amplify and value the voices of the young people in your life, for their good and for the good of all of us. Because, as Rachel said, they are the future. And as the Dalai Lama says, when we speak, we're repeating what we already know. But when we listen, we may learn something new. It's not lost on me that I'm standing here in front of you tonight sharing my voice because I was lucky. As a child, I was listened to. Listening is a precious, precious gift that costs nothing but means everything, that we can give to all of our children. And I've no doubt that all of you are already doing amazing work, encouraging, supporting, and listening to the voices of the young people you serve. So tonight, to each one of you, and to my parents, Frank and Joan, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.